September 11th, how Texas responded to America's darkest day. Howdy, young Texans. Welcome to Tales of Texas History, where we explore how the Lone Star State connects to important moments in American history. Today, we're talking about how Texas and Texans played a role during one of America's most significant days, September 11th, 2001. Let's start with the video.
Today we're looking at September 11th, 2001. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bell Ringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. Also, don't forget to check out dailybellringer.com, where you'll find more resources that go with many of the Bell Ringer videos. September 11th, 2001 was one of the darkest days in American history. By the end of the day, nearly 3,000 people had been killed in the terrorist attacks, including over 400 emergency responders. In this video, I would like to share a basic timeline of the events of that day and how it transpired. September 11th, 2001 was a typical Tuesday in mid-September. In New York City, there were sunny skies with a high near 80 degrees, and the forecast for Washington, D.C. was similar. At approximately 6 o'clock in the morning, 19 terrorists went through security at various airports along the East Coast and began boarding flights. At 7:59 a.m., American Airline Flight 11 from Boston took off heading for Los Angeles. 15 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 also took off from Boston heading to Los Angeles. At approximately 8:20, American Airline Flight 77 took off from Washington heading for Los Angeles. And at about the same time, at 8:20, terrorists took control of American Flight 11, which had taken off just 20 minutes before. At 8:42, United Airlines Flight 93 took off from Newark, New Jersey, heading for San Francisco. At 8:46, Flight 11 flies into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at about the 91st floor. The crash killed hundreds instantly and trapped hundreds more above the impact point. Immediately, hundreds of emergency responders descended upon the building to try to save as many people as possible. At 8:50 a.m., President George W. Bush, who was visiting an elementary school in Sarasota, Florida, was made aware of the events. At 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 struck the South Tower of the World Trade Center at approximately the 77th floor. Hundreds more emergency responders, firemen and policemen, rushed into the building trying to get people to safety. At 9:37 a.m., Flight 77 crashed into the west side of the Pentagon, the headquarters of the United States Department of Defense, in Arlington, Virginia, just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. 125 military personnel and civilians are killed, along with 53 passengers aboard the flight. At 9:42, the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, grounded all flights across the entire United States. At 9:43, congressmen and staff were evacuated from the U.S. Capitol building, and also the White House was evacuated. At 9:59, approximately 55 minutes after being the second building struck, the South Tower, which was 110 stories tall, collapsed in barely 10 seconds, burying hundreds of civilians and first responders in the debris. At 10:03, United Flight 93 crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after the 44 courageous passengers aboard fought back against the terrorists to save the lives of those on the ground as the flight was heading for Washington, D.C. At 10:28 a.m., a full 1 hour and 40 minutes after being hit by Flight 11, the North Tower collapsed. At 11:02, Mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, urges the people of Lower Manhattan to evacuate the city. Hundreds of boats in New York Harbor responded and evacuated thousands from the area. Thousands more walked across the Brooklyn Bridge to safety. By 12:15, the last commercial flight still in the air over the United States landed, and the entire U.S. airspace was clear. By early afternoon, emergency responders and rescue workers in New York and Washington, D.C. were searching through the scene, attempting to find survivors. At 5:20 p.m., 7 World Trade Center, a building next to the towers that had caught fire during the attacks, collapsed. Fortunately, by that point, everyone had been evacuated. That evening, 150 congressmen, both Republicans and Democrats, met on the steps of the U.S. Capitol building and together sang the song God Bless America. At 8:30 p.m., President Bush addressed the nation on television, giving his thoughts on the attacks and promising to find those responsible. In all, the attacks took the lives of 2,996 people: husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, friends, and children. Within a few short hours, the attacks of September 11, 2001 would forever change the face of America. Today, the Ground Zero Memorial in New York City, the National 9/11 Pentagon Memorial in Washington, and the Flight 93 National Memorial in Pennsylvania forever remind us of the bravery and enduring spirit of those lost on September 11th. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.
On that clear Tuesday morning, President George W. Bush, our former Texas governor, was visiting an elementary school in Florida when he received the devastating news. But did you know that Texas would soon become the center of important decisions that would shape our nation's response? When all planes were ordered to land immediately after the attacks, Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, one of the busiest airports in the world, helped coordinate the landing of hundreds of planes. Our Texas hospitality showed as communities across the state welcomed stranded passengers. At Ellington Field in Houston, Texas Air National Guard F-16s took to the skies to protect our state. In San Antonio, military bases went into high alert, ready to respond to any threats. But perhaps the most powerful Texas connection was at Barksdale's Air Force Base, just across our border in Louisiana. That's where President Bush, who had called Texas home for many years, made his first address to the nation after the attacks. Texans responded just like they always have, with big hearts and helping hands. Let me tell you about some of the amazing things that happened right here in our state. Texas Task Force 1, our elite search and rescue team, rushed into New York to help at Ground Zero. Communities across Texas held blood drives and raised money for victims' families. Texas schools welcomed students whose families had to leave New York City. Today, if you visit the Texas State Cemetery in Austin, you'll find a memorial made with two steel beams from the World Trade Center. It reminds us that even though the attacks happened far away in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania, the impact was felt deep in the heart of Texas. The story of 9/11 teaches us important lessons about courage, unity, and helping others, values that we hold dear here in Texas. Just like the generations of brave Texans before us, ordinary people became heroes that day. Before we end today's episode, let's remember that being a Texan means being there for our neighbors, whether they live next door or across the country. That's what we did on 9/11, and that's what we continue to do today. Let's look at your article. September 11th, a day that changed America. On September 11th, 2001, America experienced one of the most significant events in its history. That morning, 4 commercial airplanes were hijacked by terrorists. 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Centers in New York City. One hit the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and another crashed in a field in Pennsylvania after brave passengers fought back against the hijackers. So, let's underline 2 planes, New York City, 1, the Pentagon, another, Pennsylvania. So that's where the 4 planes went. 2 went to New York, 1 went to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and one was crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. The World Trade Center towers, which were important buildings in New York City, collapsed after being hit. Nearly 3,000 innocent people lost their lives that day, including firefighters, police officers, and emergency workers who rushed to help others. Underline 3,000 people lost. The attacks led to many changes in our country. Airport security became much stricter to keep travelers safe. Americans came together to help each other, showing great courage and unity. First responders, the firefighters, police officers, and medical workers, became recognized as true heroes for their bravery that day. So underline the word changes, airport security. Americans came together to help each other. First responders became recognized as true heroes. The site where the Twin Towers once stood is now the National September 11th Memorial and Museum. Two large pools with waterfalls now mark the spots where the towers stood, and the names of those who died are engraved around the edges. This memorial helps us remember those who lost their lives and teaches future generations about this important day in history. Today, September 11th is known as Patriots' Day, when Americans remember those who died and honor the courage shown by first responders and ordinary citizens. The phrase, "never forget," is often used to remind us of the importance of remembering this event and its impact on our country. Underline September 11th, Patriot Day. Underline never forget. The events of 9/11 showed both the worst and the best of humanity. While it was a terrible attack, it also showed how people can come together to help each other in times of crisis. Americans demonstrated remarkable strength, unity, and resilience in the face of this tragedy. This is Tales of Texas History, reminding you that every Texan, young or old, is part of our state's amazing story. Until next time, y'all stay curious.